Conspiracy theories, devil worshipping, secret societies, subliminal messages, and money laundering. All of these terms are associated with one mysterious figure. I'm going to tell you the true story of how Aleksandar Milles, a deranged Satanist, orchestrated one of the biggest book thefts in history. Aleksandar Milles was born on June 5, 1965 in Zagreb, Croatia, which was then part of Yugoslavia. He was born into an affluent, well-respected family. They were considered to be almost journalistic aristocracy. His father was Konstantin Milles, a well-respected journalist whose career was blessed with interviewing celebrities such as John Lennon, Faye Dunaway, and billionaire tycoon John Paul Getty III. Aleksandar's older sister was Maja Milles, who is remembered as one of the most important figures in the history of Croatian investigative journalism. She committed suicide at the height of her career in 1985. However, the family seemed to be cursed ever since their youngest member entered their lives. Aleksandar Milles was a disturbed child. From a very early age, he started to experience insomnia coupled with horrific nightmares. These conditions made his regular education very difficult. However, he was very intelligent, with interests differing from those of other kids his age. By his own admission, he started studying religious literature when he was only 8 years old. He surrounded himself with and spent days reading not only the Bible, but also books on black magic, spirits, and demons. Along this journey, he realized he wasn't very fond of God. He was in fact very critical of him, as he never answered any of his prayers. He was much more fascinated with Satan. He believed him more, considered him closer. And thus young Aleksandar became interested in Satanism. He became obsessed, almost fanatical with it. At one point during his childhood, his mother heard him thinking out loud in his room late at night. God is either an idiot or passive. He started hating God, and this became a huge concern and a burden for their family. His frightened mother took him to see multiple doctors, but he never received a definite diagnosis. As time went on, the boy got more and more fascinated with the devil. He started attending and even organizing black masses. Him and a couple of his friends would also create bonfires where they would occasionally burn some religious books. High school wasn't a very pleasant time for Milles either. He didn't fit in with his peers. He was considered an outcast, different from other students his age. He didn't like traditional studying. His grades were bad and he would often skip class to pursue his own interests. His colleagues described him as business-oriented. While his peers would spend their free time going out, partying and dancing, he started combining his love of old books and reading with business. As a teenager, he started cleaning people's basements and attics and would occasionally stumble onto an old book, which he would steal and resell. However, as he grew older, his business appetite grew with him. In 1979, he started placing ads in local newspapers, offering to buy old books, maps, and graphics. The response to his ads wasn't small. However, his meeting with Faith happened in 1981 when a mysterious man responded to his ads. There began a lucrative business relationship which would continue for the next 7 years. Milles explained to this man that he was mostly interested in old vintage books from the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, which the man readily and frequently provided. This man was Zlatko Kovac. While Milles was examining one of the books he bought from Kovac, he noticed a half-erased seal. He realized that the books Kovac was providing him were stolen from the National and University Library in Zagreb, which was and still is the biggest library in Croatia, holding some of the most precious and oldest books, not only from Croatian but also European history. Kovac was one of the library's employees. This realization gave Milles an idea that would vastly expand his business ventures, and it laid the foundation for one of the biggest book thefts ever committed. He decided to use Kovac to get deeper into the library's most precious depositories. Before I detail the crime, and for you to understand how they got away with it for so long, I first have to briefly explain to you the situation the library was in during that time. It was best described by a longtime librarian, Kornelija Pejčinović. In 1977, Veselko Velčić was appointed as the director of the library. According to Pejčinović, the new management of the library, or rather the lack of one, was probably one of the biggest factors responsible for Milles' success. The new administration was mainly focused on solving the library's storage problems, as the book fund was getting larger and larger and the library had to store its books in several locations. Besides that, up until 1977, the library had around 100 employees. However, the new management more than doubled that amount. The result of that was that long-time employees didn't know who their colleagues were anymore. And so, the lack of oversight from the administration, them focusing their attention elsewhere, coupled with an increased number of employees and an overall looser security policy on who can enter the library and its corridors, resulted in a borderline chaotic state of affairs. This situation created fertile ground for Milles' master plan. In 1981, after he realized Kovač was an employee of the library, Milles joined and acquired the library's membership. This gave him access to the library's large catalogs, where he would spend days familiarizing himself with the contents of the library. He would make lists of all the valuable books he had access to. An important thing to remember is that because the library had storage problems, some of the yet unregistered books were transferred from the library's then main building to Golubovets Castle, where they were being stored very poorly and almost without any supervision. So besides the main building and the registered cataloged books, Milles also eyed the castle as a lucrative target. And so, while Kovač was stealing and providing Milles books ever since they first met, around 1981-1982, they started systematically thieving the library, all under the leadership of Milles. He would provide Kovač with a list of books he was interested in and had buyers for, and Kovač would instruct a couple of his colleagues working in the library's repositories to carry the books out during their work break and bring them to Kovač, who was usually waiting in a nearby cafe. They carried one by one each day to stay under the radar of the guards working at the gate. In the beginning, they were being paid by Kovač, never having contact with Milles, whose business and quote-unquote fame was growing by the day. Milles was always a very cold and self-centered individual, an egoist who thought of himself as superior to others, but money and fame exaggerated this to a whole nother level. His name became popular in the world of book collecting, and he became known as a well-connected antiquarian. The extent of his business growth and arrogance was demonstrated quite perfectly in 1983, when he set up a tent in the center of Zagreb and held an exhibition where he sold valuable old books, maps, and graphics, a lot of them being stolen. Of course, the books had the library sealed carefully removed, but this is also a perfect example of the chaos that was happening at the library, as they didn't notice the books belonged to them, and the group continued to ravage the library's treasure. To cover his tracks and launder his ill-gotten gains, Milles opened a chain of video rental stores he named 666. Although he did live a pleasurable life, wastefully spending his stolen millions, Milles' life ideology was much deeper and more sinister. As a Satanist, most of his actions were directed towards his ideological and religious beliefs. Precisely because of that, his business was named 666, often referred to as the number of the beast. This symbol is mentioned in the Bible, specifically in the book of Revelation, the final book of the New Testament. It is associated with an apocalyptic vision of a beast that symbolizes evil and opposition to God. In Satanic culture, it is a symbol associated with the devil himself. However, this wasn't the only thing that made his store eerie. It was discovered that a lot of the movies they rented had inserted subliminal messages in them, one of the known ones being "Death, my enemy." During his later trial, he stated that the idea to name the store this way and to insert subliminal messages wasn't entirely his. According to Milles, he was a member of a secret shadowy organization called Radar. In his own words, this international organization had a vast web of powerful and wealthy members, operating with an immense budget, providing their members with every tool they needed to complete their tasks. However, his interviews didn't provide a clear statement of what these tasks were or what their end goal was. Besides that, during my research, I didn't find any information whatsoever regarding this organization. There is no known proof that they even exist. If anyone ever heard of this group, leave a comment down below, because I would really want to know whether there was a secretive society above Milles, or was it all part of his vast imagination. Milles' well-oiled network operated for years, remaining undetected. However, on July 24, 1986, a car was stopped on the Yugoslav-Austrian border heading into Austria. The driver of this car was Peter Trupe, a well-known antiquarian from Austria. Upon examining his trunk, they found a large number of stolen valuable books. When asked where he got them from, he answered, "I bought them from Aleksandar Milles." Police quickly managed to identify the crime ring around Milles. They were ready to make the arrests when suddenly an unexpected twist occurred. The higher-ups ordered that the action be stopped. The investigators from Zagreb were mad and baffled about this order, but they obliged. It is speculated that the order came from the higher-ups in Belgrade, possibly the State Security Service, Yugoslavia's notorious secret police that held enormous power in the nation. Reasons for the stoppage remain unknown. Some speculate that the secret police were helping Milles because he was ravaging the Croatian National Library, which was and is the bastion of Croatian culture. Tensions between the prominent nations in Yugoslavia, Croats and Serbs, were rising during the 1980s, culminating in the 90s with the bloody fall of Yugoslavia. The secret police was mostly controlled by the Serbian majority, and thus the destruction of Croatian culture may be a valid motive for why the secret police would hold Milles back. And so, after their identification, the clan still continued to operate for 2 more years until their final arrest in March of 1988. Upon his arrest, he stated that he thought these idiot investigators would have arrested him sooner, as he was extravagantly spending his money left and right. The trial began on May 4th, 1989, and lasted for 5 months. Although he wasn't charged alone, the star of the trial was without a doubt Aleksandar Milles, the puppet master behind the theft. Because both court and the prosecution were interested in bringing the stolen books back to the library, they complied with Milles' wild stories and eccentric personality. His attorney had a difficult task defending him, as he seemed like he didn't want to be exculpated. He was rather very open about his crimes, bragging and telling the court his grandiose plans, almost deliberately digging himself deeper into a hole. One of the most interesting parts of the trial was his statement that his final ultimate goal was to get into the library's most precious vault, steal the books for which he had buyers ready, and then burn the whole library with all of the remaining books inside. When asked why, he answered partially because he wanted to cover his tracks, but mainly because of his ideological, or rather religious beliefs. The National Library shared the building it was in with Library Metropolitana, which belonged to the Catholic Archdiocese, which he also stole from. He stated that his motive for the burning was to destroy the identity of the Catholic Church of this region, as the Metropolitana Library held the religious documents dating back to the 11th century. Thankfully, he never succeeded in his plan. Milles was finally sentenced on September 27, 1989 to 15 years in prison. However, his sentence was later reduced to 9 years, but his story didn't finish here. He was serving his sentence in a lower security semi-open type prison due to his age and non-violent offense. On one occasion in 1994, he was assigned a free weekend outside of prison. Along with his friend, he broke into a house situated in an elite hillside neighborhood in Zagreb to steal valuable paintings and other art pieces. They were however discovered and went on the run. His friend was caught right away, but Milles managed to escape the police for a moment. While running, he spotted a police officer who was guarding a politician's home. He caught him by surprise, stole his gun, and took him as hostage. He demanded from the Minister of Interior Affairs that they let his friend go and provide him with a helicopter to escape Croatia. However, after a 4-hour hostage situation, he decided to surrender himself. After he was apprehended, he told one of the investigators he was considering shooting the police officer, wanting the SWAT team to then finish him off. In fact, he was very prone to suicide attempts. His 6th one actually happened 5 days after the hostage crisis, when he jumped off the prison's boiler room but managed to survive. However, his 7th suicide attempt was his final. On his birthday, June 5, 1995, he was found dead in the prison hospital bed, having poisoned himself. He left a suicide note on the wall, glued with chewing gum. Among everything he wrote in it, his final remark was, "See you in hell." There are a lot of unresolved questions about this case. Of course, one of them being where are the stolen books, although some of them are occasionally being found throughout Europe and returned to the library. However, the biggest question mark for me remains, where is the money? During his trial, Milles provided the court with passwords to several bank vaults located in Austria that, as he said, contained more than a dozen notebooks on not only all the buyers he sold the books to, but also high-ranking members of society that were in some way involved in his crimes. He also told the court that the money was being held in secret bank accounts in Munich, Germany, as well as Switzerland. For reasons unknown, after his conviction, the courts never demanded or followed on his claims, as they evaluated his claims were lies, despite several Austrian bank employees confirming Milles had a vault open with them. To this day, we still don't know what was hiding in those vaults and where the money went. If you liked my video essay, consider checking out some of my older videos and subscribing, if you want of course, so you can stay tuned to my future uploads. I'm currently researching some very interesting subjects that I think will certainly be entertaining to anyone who liked Milles' story.